I'm Benji.
And I'm Abby.
And today we are busking it with...
Elliot Mackenzie.
Hello, Elliot.
Hello.
And Elliot is also the assistant artistic director of the company as well.
Ooh.
Indeed, I'm your right-hand person, and I.
You are. You sort me out, basically.
Yeah. I'm like the proofreader of the company.
You are. So, Elliot, could you just tell us about sort of what you were doing before lockdown and what you've been doing during lockdown as well?
Yeah. So, before lockdown, I was in a show. It was called $1 Million Quartet, and it was it was a play with songs about kind of rock and roll stars in the 1950s. So Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash, and Elvis Presley. And it's sort of a play with songs that because there was one night, and it actually happened in the 1950s, where they all came together for one kind of jam sesh at their old studio. And what was amazing about it was that like everyone working on it was such like 1950s nerds. So every bit of it was kind of meticulously detailed in terms of kind of historical accuracy. So all the guitars were legit, were kind of, remakes of 1950s guitars. All the amps, the microphones were designed to look and sound like they would have, like, it was all super legit, including the arrangements as well, which was very, very cool.
And what have you been doing?
We did 2 weeks in India, and then
what have you been doing during lockdown?
During lockdown, I've been doing it. I've just been trying to find as many different things that I can do as possible. So if people ask me to do something, I'll go, yeah. Just because it sort of keeps me sane. Really, I have to have stuff that isn't, driven by me to work on, to feel okay. Actually, really. So I'm working with an amazing company called Action to the Word. So I'm doing a couple of things with them. We're doing a production of an online Zoom actor muso version of Macbeth.
Love it.
Which is which is going to be very, very interesting. So that's sort of just starting, and then I'm sort of halfway through another project with them, which is called Weird Sisters, that I'm music supervising, which is it's taking the witches from Macbeth and sort of taking the first couple of scenes that they're in, and sort of presenting that in a format that's kind of accessible to people who haven't really encountered that much Shakespeare before. So it might be for kind of, kids studying at a GCSE level. It might be for adults who just sort of are interested and haven't really haven't really delved into it. So I'm doing the music for that as well. So that's really cool. Written a 3-part metal choral music song for the middle of that, which is quite cool, which is possibly one of the most me things I've ever written.
Is it in 7/8?
It's in mixed meter. It's mostly in 9, but then it delves into 5 once. So it's suitably me.
There he is.
Yeah.
Amazing. So this week we're going to be sort of delving into Wondertown 2018, I think. From
great
when
stuff.
We performed it at the Ugly Duck. We're sort of just going to look at how we made the show, basically.
Sweet.
Let's talk about our parts and that. So go to Elliot first. MD in that show. Obviously, we talked about it last week. We did the symposium part beforehand. How did it feel, kind of doing that little step up and having that, I'd like to say, power in a way of having that new writing piece and having that MD role in that? Did it feel different than other stuff you've done before?
Yeah, well, the only real difference was the scale of things, really, because sort of, before that point, we'd done a 45-minute, stripped down version that you talked about last week about, in symposium and that kind of thing. And I'd been, and while that was sort of very cool and definitely a sort of stepping stone for the project we did at the Ugly Duck, a lot of it was, I think we sort of fully arranged, or kind of nearly fully arranged, about 4 numbers, didn't we, or something like that?
Yeah.
And then the rest of it was basically just Benji behind the piano playing everything else. So that was a big step up. yeah, so just from doing that kind of stripped down version and MDing sort of individual songs here and there to, to the sort of realization that you're going to be doing, a full kind of, hour and 20 or whatever it was, kind of actor musical. That was the real difference, really, was scale. And I suppose the people as well, because while the cast generally was pretty much the same, wasn't it? We had a few extra people and a couple of changes.
Well, that was a question I was going to ask, is the fact, obviously, when we did it in Symposium, we had one actor, and then the rest were the actor muso course. Yeah. And then, obviously, we had more I can't say the word. Integration?
Integration.
That's the one. We had more integration between the actors.
It's Abby's word of the week.
Integration. More intricate, I can't say it, between the actors and the actor musicians. How was that for you? Because obviously I know had you MD'd stuff before in that year with the mix between both courses?
Yeah, I think I had. Yeah, I had, but generally most of the players that I had were musos, so it was kind of different. Although, we kind of, the three of us and Benji and I would sort of, we cast it from a perspective that we need people, if they're not massively amazing players, they need to be musical, because otherwise it ain't gonna work. It won't work. So from that standpoint, we had, I think we had still some, really fantastic people working on it, and there wasn't a massive difference from that standpoint. And the core team of people playing was still the people that had been playing it, for the last couple of years. So it didn't seem that any massive changes that were made through people were sort of additive as opposed to, alternative. So any people that were playing on it were just kind of more people playing on stuff.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, that was one of the hardest working casts, certainly that I've been with, because they were fantastic. So if there were bits that people struggled with, I remember there was one particular Talia, who's awesome for a variety of reasons. She hadn't really done a lot of actor muso stuff before, but she was a percussionist. So we had her playing drums in one of the numbers, and there was one specific fill that I seem to recall it took her a little while to get. It wasn't the hardest thing in the world, but often they're not, just some things just bend your brain a little bit. And for whatever reason, we struggle with them. And I remember coming in, I think Benji and I were in at like 9 o'clock the next day, and we came in and it turned out that she'd sort of been there playing from about, 8:15.
As soon as the college opened, she was there.
Yeah, pretty much. As soon as she could get in the building, she was there, and, was bashing away at it. And she was like, if I'm going to be playing in it, I need to be able to do it, and I'm just going to keep playing it until, so in that respect, in that respect, it was fantastic to have people on the team that were going to be like that.
Yeah.
What was it like for you, Benji? Because there was sort of, because a lot of the foundation of that project and our process was kind of musicality based, and we had a lot of people who hadn't necessarily been introduced into that work.
Yeah, well, because I was the writer, director, I played a very small Welshman in it, as we all did. We should point that out. We all were in it as well as being creatives, which was ridiculous and bonkers, but brilliant. But yeah, because I'm someone who, I can't read sheet music, which is, again, an interesting thing between Elliot and mine's relationship creatively. So I would sort of write the songs and write out the chord sheets and lead sheets and send them to Elliot, and he'd go, "What the hell are you doing there?" And Elliot sort of then would take what I was creating and translate that, I think, into what the actors would do, and what he arranged a lot of it in the room as well. So it was quite an amazing 2 months, the lead up to the project, the whole rehearsal process, which was about a month, and then the 1 week of performances, the reception was sort of really, really great. And it was a really defining moment for the company, because it was sort of, we'd spent all this time at Rose Bruford sort of building up what we're about and what we want to create, and then that was sort of us flying the nest, it felt. And the production in The Ugly Duck was a real tribute to our training, and to Peter Bramley's movement classes, and Tess and Julian and everyone. There was a bit of everything in there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's sort of how your brain works, isn't it?
Yeah.
You sort of wrote that piece like, sort of everything I like about music and musical theatre and theatre, I'm just going to put in one production.
Yeah.
And then it's up to everyone else to sort of figure it out.
Yeah. And it was perhaps a bit intense at times. So I've been rewriting it and figuring out how I sort of make it a bit less full on for the audience, because it was a very in your face, absurd, there was clowning, there was sort of really, there was lots of musical theatre pastiche in there. It was such a mixed bag of stuff. So I think moving it forward, I'm definitely going to look at how to iron out some of that to make it a bit more easy on the ear for some people.
But that was the beauty of having the opportunity to like showcase that piece in your writing, though, isn't it? Like we get to have that moment to have that influx of audience, to have that feedback, to have the safety net of Bruford, as we've talked about before, to just be able to change it and see what's right, what's wrong. And like we said, the company's only young.
Yeah.
So it's still finding our feet and finding what works.
I should mention, so in the pre-production process for Wondertown, so it started off, so Alison, our course leader, said we could do the show in our new writing season. And then she sort of plonked us with an amazing director, dramaturg, just legendary, beautiful human man thing, Scottish person, Ian Reiki, who I have a lot of love for and a lot of respect for.
Oh, yeah.
I think we all do.
We do.
So he spent a good 2 months Skyping with me all the time. I'd send him drafts of the script, and he would he'd give me notes, and we'd have Skype sessions. I vividly remember the first one that Elliot and I had with him, and we talked about everything, and he was jet lagged because he'd been flying around the world with his job.
Yeah, he was coming back from India or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, Ian Reiki was very instrumental in us sort of realizing the production and making sure everything was dramaturgically sound, and really making sure all the political content and the polemic things coming across were clear. Yeah. So he was just a genius, and because of all of us were in it, Ian was sort of the outside eye when we had to be in the show during the last few weeks of rehearsal. So he sort of was
particularly in tech and stuff.
Yeah, and in tech he was our director in tech and stuff. So I really appreciate him. But Abby, if we talk about what your role was and who helped you out during the process.
Yes, so I did the choreography, and I'm going to say more movement as well. For some things, because it felt like a really close relationship between me and you, Benj.
Yeah.
On just the flow of a lot of it in the scenes, because it had such a specific language movement-wise, and I think to get what the message was across in the different worlds, because obviously we're moving from Wondertown to the present day, but then back and forward, you needed to get that across. I had Jen Rooney supervising me, and the legend that is Jen Rooney. So that was lovely to have her, obviously, because we'd worked with her before through Bruford. So I felt like we had that conversation language already. Had seen some of her work, so she kind of knew what it was. So that was nice to have that relationship there already. And just a lot of stuff that she'd said, and obviously she'd done once, and I just remember her saying, "You don't have arms."
Yeah.
And I know that is such a simple thing to say, but going, "You don't have arms," right? What can you do with 2 legs?
As a choreographer, that does sort of put a certain amount of fear in you, doesn't it?
Yeah,
really?
You're like, there's only 2 legs. What do I do? Right. And
yeah.
And I just remember there's one piece that was always my favourite piece to do, and I'll watch the video back occasionally and just be really happy. And it was Golden Afternoon. And it was the one section where we just all went into a circle and we started to just do really random leg patterns and like jump in, and it was really effective. But I think why it was effective was because it was simple, and I think that's the trick with, in my personal opinion, and what I enjoy is if you keep it simple, it can look sharper and more effective, and it gets the storytelling out more, which I think is really important in that piece. Obviously there's other pieces where you want a big number, which we had later on with was it the Roses?
The Vote for Me was kind of an epic
Vote for Me was
epic
massive.
number.
So, but if you want more of a storytelling instead of a number, I think there was a massive difference there in the choreography. So you need
There's
to support
also the fact as well that you're working with non-dancers most of the time as well.
I forgot about that. Yeah, exactly. And that is that if you want, you need to keep it clean. You need to keep it not. I wouldn't say basic because that takes away from what people can do, because you wouldn't think that people were non-dancers in that room.
Yeah.
You know, because and like you were saying, Elliot, with people working really hard. I remember formation is such a massive thing where there was a section in Mad where we just needed to keep lines. It's just keeping lines, and people you could just, it was like a school of fish.
Yeah.
The lines were everywhere, and it's just that drill. I became a drill sergeant at that point.
Yeah.
But it's like, keep that simple and just go for it. But people worked on it, and we were like, right, okay, no, we need to get this. And I didn't have to say anything anymore because people were like, no, right, let's keep our lines, let's do this, come on. And it, especially on the days where you're shattered, you're working till 9 o'clock at night in the rehearsal room, and it was boiling.
Yeah.
So you're doing a dance call and everyone's like dying, and the atmosphere and the ethos in that room was just amazing, and I couldn't have wanted better people to work with.
It was magical. It was a magical time for all of us, I think, because I'd certainly dreamt of this, but I think all of us then started dreaming of it, you know, for a while, and it actually happened. We took control. We were sort of leading our company out into the world, and it was really amazing.
It certainly felt like the best kind of halfway house, didn't it, between we were definitely running, literally and metaphorically running the show, but we had a bit of backing from people who knew what they were talking about. But ultimately its success or failure was on us, which is hugely important.
I'm just having this sort of vision now. My brain's going back to the moment when Tommy Ogbaro would be leaping around the room with that double bass. Talking of movement, like some of the things you talked about keeping things simple, but there was sort of the things that people were doing with instruments physically in that
was insane.
in the show.
He did a box jump with a double bass. The boy can't do a box jump, and I don't know where it came from. He's never had that training. He just sprang into this box.
It was amazing.
With this double bass. And I was like, how did you do that? Keep it in.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. It was, and I think that's a testament to the music in a way that give you the freedom to be able to do that, because we worked really close as well, obviously, Elliot, where we were like, right, shall we do the movement first, and I can add in some more things musically, or do you want to fully set that musical number and I'll just work around that? And I think having us three as close as we were was a fantastic key moment of getting the piece where it was.
That
makes sense.
Definitely. Definitely, I think so. And I think on that sort of relationship between the music and the choreography, I think something that's big to think about is part of our process, and certainly part of a lot of people when they're doing an act or musical, or even a play with songs, is like you've got a 4-week rehearsal process. You spend like week 1 working on the music, basically, pretty much exclusively. And that was certainly what we did and what we continue to do. So what it meant was, sort of generally speaking, I had a fair chunk of time, and that was time that I don't think Abby did have, because there were some truly mammoth moments. I think it was down to Wondertown, the first time we get all the characters kind of coming in. I believe she did it in about 50 minutes, and it's like a 3-minute number with like people cartwheeling in and stuff, like, and it was I remember quite clearly, Abby turning to Benji and going, right, Benji, how long have I got on this? And Benji went, under an hour, and she'd go, right, and then it's like, right, okay, back, here we go then.
There we go.
So if we were going to do it again, because I know Benji, you're rewriting it, and I think you'd have us all on board, which would be lovely. What would we do differently? So let's start with Elliot. Go.
I think from a practical perspective, I'd have a score worked out beforehand, because it's a simple fact that time is often the biggest restraint, and the nature of the nature of the run up to to that season of work we were doing, and the time that sort of none of us had really, was that nearly all the arrangements had to be done in the room, which I think was great, and I'm not sure it would have sounded like it did had we not have done that, which is to its credit. But you've just got a little bit more control if you're working from sheet music. So yeah, I think if and when we do it again, I'm not sure there'll be as much arranging in the room. But that said, there will always be some room arrangement that goes on, because stuff like, particularly when you're working with musos on a muso show, stuff like kind of interlude music, and playoffs and that kind of thing, I sort of think it's just a bit sterile to work it out beforehand, before you know what's happening, and before who's doing what and that kind of thing. So yeah, that would be my thing, I think.
Cool. I'll go for me. I think, especially because I know you're rewriting it, Benj, if there was a bigger difference movement-wise and body language-wise between the two worlds, I'd love to see a massive shift in the characters and the clown version of the characters, the Wondertown version of the characters. And I think we got it a bit in some of the numbers, a bit more towards the end numbers, but if that became really shifty and dynamic, that you could go, oh, they're normal now, oh, they're that, without anyone saying a word. I think that would be the goal, because I think the big numbers work. Obviously, we can clean it, but I think that detail would be the thing I'd love to do.
Yeah, well, that's the thing I've really been thinking about as I've been rewriting it, is defining the real world and Wondertown, the Wonderland world. That's been a big part of the rewrites. And also because the political landscape is changing every 5 minutes and has been for the last year. So I'm exploring how, if the show had a future life, how it could evolve with what's happening in the world politically, and exploring how maybe there's moments in the script that say you can improvise depending upon the news that's happening that week or that day or that month. Just because, the core of the show, it's about a young girl who's trying to figure out politics. And I think that will be universal forever, but yeah, the specific political things like party names and certain events that happen within those parties, I think, is always changing. So it's been quite hard to keep that coherent. So yeah, I'm looking at how I can do that, and scoring it out. So we will score that out. I'm working on that, Elliot, I promise.
Great stuff.
Yeah, and I think
one thing we've not mentioned is actually about the staging, that it was in Traverse.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite important when 3 creatives are in it. So you can't even just come out front and see it. You've got to see it from the angles.
Yeah, from a musical perspective as well. You've got no, with end-on staging, there's a certain amount of wall of sound. That the whole audience is going to hear things the same. Whereas if one side might have a clarinet in front of them, the other side might have a guitar in front of them, and you got to know that when you're doing it.
Yeah.
Working on that mix, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the Traverse changed from the Symposium version to the Ugly Duck. It became wider in the Ugly Duck, so it was more challenging. So my dream would be to take this to community halls, and we'd have a wider space. I think the Traverse would work better in that setting, definitely.
There was one time I remember though, and I think it's a testament to how much of an ensemble we were as a
I know
group.
exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah, and it's the moment where we were in mid-show having a massive dance to Keep It Camp, Keep It Gorgeous, of all songs, and Benji presses the DJ button in the middle
and it starts
of the
playing
song.
like this romantic classical music.
It's like and to my memory, the entire cast sort of just stopped where they were and then went. It just started like bopping.
Bops, and it was brilliant because it was a big number musically and choreographically, and everyone just froze, looked at each other, and just went for it.
Okay.
Testament to all of the cast and that ensemble. It was amazing.
So Elliot, how would you sum up the show in one sentence?
One sentence. Political jazz folkiness.
I like it. Abby?
That's how I do it.
Gonna say political crazy.
These are very short sentences. I love them.
I suppose they are.
I'd probably go a rompy political awakening.
Oh,
Maybe it is a bit of a romp. Wondertown.
Yeah, it is. It was described as a romp.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching Busk It with
Benji
and Abby, and this week,
Elliot.
Yay!
Join us next week. We're busking it with the Pardon lot. We're busking it with the writer and the MD, which is James Hastings and Joel Nash. So we'll see you then.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Cheers.